Anthony, you're my special guest for the Art of Feeling Better podcast today, and we're doing some incredible work together. But I'm really interested to find out about your story a little bit more and why you do what you do and why it's so important to influence the big changes that we're looking to do. So I know you've had loads of travels over your time and you've met lots of exciting and interesting people. But will you just give me a bit of background into where this all came from in the first place?
I can do. It's sort of in different ways. I mean, one thing is, yes, about the different travels. I was brought up in Africa. I remember being chased by elephants and things like that from a very early age. But I think probably the most interesting thing for me was just I was desperately unpopular at school. I absolutely hated every moment of it. I was either known as fidgety or a show-off, and I was always excluded.
Wow.
And I remember, what that damage that can do. And, the best thing that ever happened to me was when my housemaster said, you're far, far too stupid to go to university. And at that moment, I went, freedom.
Yeah.
And he said to me, would you like an exchange potentially you can apply for to America? And I went, yes. And that changed my life.
Wow.
So I think we've really, what I've learned most of all, I think, is to be the outsider, to think differently is such a massive advantage. To realize that anything that happens to you is so positive.
Yeah, and that's the whole I will not complain framework that you bring in, isn't it? It must have taken such courage to make that decision at that time, though, and think, I'm doing it. I'm just going to be brave. I'm just going to go.
Well, I think there was no other alternative.
Really? So you were kind of backed into that corner?
I really was. I mean, basically, I think today it's still true, but the reality of this country is enthusiasm is still a certifiable mental disorder.
Yes.
If you want to do something with your life, if you got passion, if you got interest, if you want to do something, people just say, why?
There's something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you. I mean, literally at the age of 17, my parents were very free with me. They let me go off to Spain by myself. I literally turned up the Estancia El Duque de Pino Hermoso because I wanted to fight bulls.
Brilliant.
So he let me go and fight bulls. So I've got photographs of me fighting small bulls, I stress. And the bulls were not hurt, but I had big enough horns and I didn't do it for too long. But it's just a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think another real moment for me was I'm a hitchhiker.
Yes, I believe so.
Which is trusting people. To me, it is so important. I'm still hitchhiking. I was hitchhiking in Dubai a couple of 3-4 months ago. I was out, parachute drops in, had to hitch back another 50 kilometers into town. Nice. Now, I'm still a hitchhiker, but for me, it was extraordinary in America. Someone had given me a ride to Alabama from Massachusetts, where I was. And I was going to head down to New Orleans with a friend of mine, and the car stopped, and they said, so are you going to, I said, are you going to New Orleans? She said, no, I'm going to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
And I just said, well, can I come with you?
I'll go, yeah.
Crossing the Mississippi.
Wow.
And I had absolutely no money. I mean, I had a few dollars, literally. Then I met someone and said, hey, come along, I'll drive you around, show you Colorado Springs. And then I just sort of hitchhiked all the way back to Washington, D.C. I then hitchhiked down to Florida. In 10 days, I'd hitched 4,000 miles.
Wow.
And I saw a little airport. I said, hey, can you stop here? I'm going to try and see if... And within literally half an hour, I was on a flight flying by a private plane to the Bahamas. And there I met someone who said, I'm just about to go on holiday. You can have my flat. Stay there. And I think for me, at a really, really early age, it has always been, people are going to be nice to me.
Yeah.
And I just think we've got to just keep pushing that door. And if I can sort of go on to one final story, I was 17 and Hair, which had the first nudity in London and everything else, dawning of the age of Aquarius and all of the other ones, Vince Nicholas, Elaine Page and all the rest. And I went and watched it and I was so excited. I was a very keen photographer. And I went backstage of the Shaftesbury Theatre and I pushed the door open a little bit. And there was a girl there called Annabelle Littledale, one of the cast. She said, come on in. I went, what? She said, I need some photographs for the playbill, for my playbill.
You had a camera with you?
I had my camera. She said, look, could you take a photograph? And I went, yeah, of course I can. So I took some photographs of her and I came back the next day, or a couple of days later. I said, wow, that was fantastic. And then I became the unofficial hair photographer. So even, Elaine Page has still got on her website photographs I took of her. And I then sort of said, hey, why don't you come up to school? Because I was at school quite close in London. And they turned up at school. And all of a sudden, for the first time, my status went up at school.
Yes.
And it just with these little things in my life, from being desperately unpopular, desperately shy, desperately out of it, I suddenly realized, wow, there's excitement. And I think that is what I want to get across. God, life is exciting. Yeah. I mean, I'm 73 and I am so excited. I'm off to Mongolia. I'm off there. To me, life is as exciting as it was. Why isn't it for everybody?
You're only limited by your imagination, aren't you? And I wonder do you think the way you were raised, the way you were brought up, where you were parented has had an impact? Did you have more choice?
I think they did, but they had no idea what it, really. Yeah. My father, he was never asked, was I happy at school? It was, you sort of got dropped in like a puppy and they were sort of, off you go.
Do what you're meant to do.
Do what you're meant to do. Yeah. There was no idea, well, you should join the army. But it's a tradition. When I headed off to Japan on my one-way ticket when I was 22 to Japan, so I've literally been an immigrant arriving in Yokohama by boat with less than £1,000 in my pocket. So I know what it's like to be the immigrant, lived there for 30 years. But, my father just wrote, yes, my son left for Japan. There's no sort of excitement in it or anything else.
He's gone. Yeah.
That's gone. He just sort of headed off to Japan. And, when Rebecca was born, my daughter, he just wrote, Rebecca born, hopefully it'll be a son next time.
Oh, wow.
And you sort of go,
stop, Dad, come on.
What is this?
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is quite crazy.
It is extraordinary.
I'm so lucky that I was such a failure.
Yes, I love that. I love that about you, that nothing limits you.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to people. Enjoy the failure. Yes. Enjoy the excitement. Just live a life with curiosity, passion and courage. Yeah. Financially, I've been a disaster of the mistakes I've made. And
I hear you. Right there, right? But do you know that can limit you or it can free you, right?
Yeah, and I think, I wrote a book decades ago called In Search of Inspiration. And my opening line there is, my greatest opportunity and challenge in my life so far has been the freedom of choice to shape my own destiny.
Beautiful.
Because I genuinely believe we are the first generation since our ancestors left the cave to have that freedom. They don't have it in Iran. They don't have it in Russia. They don't have it in China.
Yeah.
Japan is still socially so challenging for people through society. We have freedom.
Yes.
So really my quest in life has been to understand what I need to know about the laws of Mother Nature, human nature, and myself if I want to have a sense of identity and purpose. And that has really been my quest.
That is your whole framework, isn't it? I think in terms of freedom, you and I, it's the rebel in me. You and I make the most bizarre double act, don't we, really? On the surface of it.
Yeah.
But we're so aligned with our vision and our values and just experiencing life. But I think in terms of freedom, the irony for me is we have access to all this freedom, but people have these self-imposed prisons that they live within through society, through conditioning, through family relationships, through what they're told and what they consume through the media. So I think it's our job to liberate people and help them understand the options they have.
And that's sort of what I've been working on. I think one of the things I've discovered is civilization for 5,000 years exists on splitting three things: power, wealth, and status.
Yes.
If you can split those three, then you're always going to have people trying to get the other one.
Yes.
Someone who gets lots of money tries to marry his daughter off to someone who's got a title or God knows what else. Everybody's looking for prestige. Everybody's looking for something because it's all illusionary.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at mirrors.
So what I believe people need to look at is the power of their personality, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, it means you appreciate who you are and that you have got power.
Yes,
just
absolutely.
how you've got it, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Then you've got to appreciate your wealth is the wealth of your life experience, what's gone right and where you picked up your wisdom, knowledge and experience, right?
Yep.
That's what we're both doing at
Absolutely.
this moment. We are playing with the power of our personality, the wealth of our life experience.
Yep.
And then I think we've got to our status, which is what we need, can only come from feeling that our contribution is valued
absolutely.
and appreciated and everything else.
Yes.
And that's what we're...
That was very dramatic.
Yes, it was, yes. But that is what I think we're all desperate for.
Yes.
We need to feel that we've got power of personality, wealth of our life experience, and the status that we can contribute. And that is what I think the challenge of society today is, that people cannot feel appreciated. They have jobs that they have no idea what they're actually meant to be doing, how they can contribute, control. They are robbed of every single point of reference that gives them identity.
Yes.
And that's where I believe the maps do, because it provides them with a context for conversation that they can feel where they're vulnerable, where they're hopeful, where they need more resilience, and they can start having real conversations.
Yes, and it is that universal wisdom framework. That is your framework, isn't it? It's building the old in with the new, looking at technology and AI and all the ways that we can get out to people, but bringing in that ancient wisdom, which is my passion. And you're like the connector. You meet so many amazing people that are all on the same path, and you seem to have this talent to bring them into the room together. And it's really exciting where we're at now, the possibility for change and the conversations around what is wealth and how we reframe education and health. It's really exciting, and it must be great for you, because this is your life's work. Some of the things you shared with me back from when you 30 years ago writing things, it's all starting to come into play now, isn't it? All these years later.
It is fascinating, yeah. And as you know, I think it was Steve Jobs says you can't actually connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going backwards. And I think, this is why we've got to do so many different things in our life. That's why we've got to fail so often, move, be brave. But it's not being brave. It's just living.
It's living. It's living rather than existing, isn't it?
Exactly. Oh, shit, I got that wrong. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. How amazing. What can I do with it?
What can I do with that? I'm not going to do that
again. We're not
taught
that, are we? We're not taught that in school. We're not taught that in our family units. We're taught that that's wrong. We're taught that we have to toe the line and we have to conform. Otherwise, like you said at the beginning, we're a problem. There's something wrong with us. We have a personality disorder.
Oh God,
we're not encouraged to express ourselves creatively or look at our imagination or have our emotional needs met in any way. And we're taught to look away and be distracted from ancient wisdom, aren't we? How did our ancestors survive? Don't look at that, because that's the key. That's what we should be doing. So let's look somewhere else.
And that connection, as I was showing you earlier, I want to set up the Institute of Primary Knowledge to really look at what are those instincts that we've had screened out from us. Why in indigenous communities, none of this mental health problems. Why do they have more identity than us? Because they've got a simpler life. No, they haven't got a simpler life. They've got exactly the same complexities. And that's why I believe we can simplify everything down to rivers, mountains, and swamps. Who sits around our fire? Once you know your swamp and who you want and what other people want to do, then you can do it. And I think the other area that, as you know, we've talked about is the hunting, protecting, and growing.
Yes, absolutely.
But we have to start by, what are we really hunting?
If we don't know, do we? We have to identify it.
But we've got to start, we're hunting love.
Yes.
We're hunting respect. We're hunting identity. We're hunting to be relevant. We're hunting community.
Connections.
And once we can say that is what we want more than anything else, and the Ferrari ain't going to give it to us.
It's not bottom line in your bank account, is it?
So if we can hunt that, then what do we have to grow in our lives? Yes, of course, grow our skills, grow our knowledge, grow our connections, protect our identity and our values. And yes, we've got to grow our bank accounts. I'm not saying we shouldn't. No, let's grow our bank accounts as much as we want to feel comfortable. And then let's think what we can do to make ourselves, what experiences can we have to make us relevant. And I think that's helping others. And
how can we pass it forward? How can we share those feathers of wisdom? How can we pay it forward? How can we each be valued equally in our own spaces? It's just, it's what we should be doing. And it's so exciting. And I know we've got some brilliant work to do. So I'm super excited to do more of this. And I think you'll probably be a feature on several of these podcast episodes, because we're going to look at education and we're going to look at all kinds of things. But just before we go, I've got a couple of questions to ask you. And before I ask you the questions, just tell me some of the people. Give me a list of some of the most inspirational people that you have met in your life and the people that you were bringing around your campfire. Because I know you've mentioned some incredible people to me over the last few years.
Well, I think it was, again, a decision that came out of being in Kenya when I saw the Maasai. And what I saw for the first time in my life, I saw people who had substance without arrogance. Mm. And I realized all we have is arrogance without substance. And where I came from and how I was educated, it was combined with effortless insincerity.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, real effortless insincerity. That's what it really perfected. Mm-hmm. And so I went off to Kenya. I saw this and I thought, wow, I was actually having lunch with a friend of mine. He said, so what are you going to do with what you've seen? I said, I'm going to get a Papua New Guinea. And I was in Tokyo at the time. Why not? Because, I mean, it's still pretty violent, wild there. It still is. So I thought, I'll ring up the ambassador. So I, that afternoon, rang the embassy and I spoke to Jerry Ibarami. And Jerry was the secretary there. I went to see him and I got a call from him the next day saying the ambassador would like to see you. And that's when I met Joseph Nombri. And I will never forget walking into there. Joseph remembers first contact.
Wow.
He remembers escaping from his tribe, 5 days going through enemy tribes, etc.
Wow.
And just sitting down with him. And I said, sir, what have you got that we've lost? He said, why don't you go to my village? And that was then I went up to the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And that's when I saw people still running around with arse grass, feathers.
Wow.
You know, I mean, It really was spears, huge knives and things. And I thought, wow, this is sort of fascinating. And I can ask you, people who hand out their feathers,
Absolutely.
People who keep them, people who've earned their spear and who's got plastic ones.
Yeah, who steals them.
Who steals them.
Yeah.
And that's when I said to him, sir, what is the most important thing in your life? When I got back, thinking he'd say his car, his family, is something like that. Yeah. He just looked at me and said, it is my territory.
Wow.
And he then drew it on a napkin. And that then really made me think, wow. And he wrote, I know my duty because I know what I'm protecting.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
That was then I realized that for the first 99.9% of human existence, our identity has come from what are we protecting?
Yeah, our territory.
It's our territory. But we've got to know it's our personality, it's our food, it's everything. And I mean, you think an amoeba, if an amoeba doesn't know its territory or where its food, it dies. So I think that is a fundamental instinct that we have to know. Yeah. And that's our security, our resilience, and everything came from that. So fundamentally, everything I have ever sort of thought since then has been meeting different people and asking them, what is your territory? How do you do it? And all conversations around, are they protecting? Are they,
are they hunting?
What are they trying to do within it? So I can say I've met lots of wonderful, inspiring people such as yourself, but it's really, it all sort of stemmed from this idea that one can believe in oneself. And if he believed in me, then I can believe in anybody and vice versa.
It's perfect. It is. It's perfect. And there's so many exciting things that we've got ahead. Yeah. So I have for this podcast, which is called The Art of Feeling Better. Yeah. That's my passion, is just to support people in because it's just a shit show, isn't it? The planet is a nightmare. We've had so many deep conversations about this. It's all back to front. It's all upside down. So if we can try and pay it forward on as many platforms as possible, and the more people I can get in to speak like this and to share their authentic stories and just little hints and tips to help people feel better, the better. So I've got 3 questions for you. The first question is, and I know you have the answer to this because we talk about it all the time, but how do you change the world? How do we change the world? If things are so ingrained, what can we do to change it?
I think it is giving people a sense that they're valuable to humanity. I really do. And in 1988, when I set up my company, I Will Not Complain, I said, right, I've got 2 things to do, and that is to unlock trust and willpower. Yeah. And we cannot have willpower if we don't trust ourselves. Yeah. So I think we've got to have clarity of who we are. We've got to appreciate ourselves. It's not around loving oneself. It's just knowing we are powerful. We've got to appreciate it.
Yes.
And that's really
That's the
what I
key.
think. And again, how do you get identity? Well, you just put a river across a bit of paper and work out how you're going to build the bridges to the other side.
Yeah.
That is going to make you happier because you can start to see progress and how far you've come.
Yeah, and you have a map. You have a map that you can then, you
Correct.
have a space to work towards, and you can see the bigger picture, and you can zoom out. And this is why I think this is how you change the world.
Yep.
Using your territory maps and all of the people, their programs that you're building in, My Mindset Mojo, all of those tools should be able to influence and really change the world. The question number 2 is there one little simple thing that you think people could do out there, just bring into your life every day that might help you feel better while we're changing the world? What is the one thing that might give people some peace?
God, I suppose in age, I've stopped worrying.
I'm learning. I'm trying to learn. Yeah.
I really. I remember waking up worrying about this, worrying about that. And you just go, honestly, what did one worry about last week? One's always forgotten.
Well, that's great advice.
And you just can't. We can't change the world. We can't do, zero carbon or anything else. Let's just work out and just go, right, that's happening. If we can't control it, we can't influence it. We can't influence the government. Let's just influence ourselves and be happy with our friends and who sits around our fire, have some good conversations.
Brilliant advice. And the very last question I have is, do you have a favourite song that helps you feel better? So I'm doing a Spotify playlist, and we're building nicely with the community, but I'm going to ask every guest for their number one feel-good tune. It could be anything.
I think it's good old Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Teach Your Children.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, nice. High five for that one. Brilliant choice. Thank you so much, Anthony. That's brilliant. It's going straight on the podcast. It's going straight on the Spotify playlist, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
So am I, as always. Yeah, thank you.
Next one. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.